Hello humans, my name is Dael Kingsmill. Today I'm bringing you an interview. A number of you called to my attention a Kickstarter that's been happening. It's a 5th edition adventure book by Worlds. It's called Odyssey of the Dragonlords, and it's basically a Greek epic in the vein of like the Argonautica or the Odyssey, you know, island hopping with a bunch of Greek heroes combined with D&D. And since that is the perfect intersection of what I talk about on this channel, I thought you might be interested in an interview. So I got to talk to Jesse Skye, one of the designers. You might be familiar with his work with Bioware. No more ado, get on with it. Here's the interview. So, first thing that I want to talk about, obviously, Kickstarter, funded super quickly. How quickly did that come together? Because by the time I had people sort of shouting at me, you have to go and check this out within the first day or two, it was already well beyond funded. And I mean, at this stage, looking at it from my end, I know that Australian dollars, it's gone past $371,500.
That's a bigger number than US dollars.
It is a bit, yeah.
Yeah, it's 280 something, I think, right now, US dollars. So, but yeah, it's good. It was funded in the first 11 hours, which was surprising to me. I mean, it's always hard to know what to expect. We've never done one of these before, and you know, we're partnering with Medifis Entertainment, British RPG publisher, and they've done like 8 or 9 of these before, so they, you know, kind of describe what they thought the process was going to look like, and so on. Like, you know, just no one really knows what's going to happen when you put the page up. So yeah, it was exciting. We actually went live an hour before I thought we would because I had the time zones mixed up. Because I had told Medifis it'd be 10 a.m. our time or something, and I did the translation wrong, and their social media team actually goes home at 5 p.m. London time, and so they're like, no, you need to go out an hour earlier, or else we can't help you promote it. And so I was like, oh good, so I was like scrambling, you know, to get it out an hour earlier that morning.
Time zones are the bane of everyone's existence.
Yeah, but yeah, it was the first day, and that was it was super cool.
I mean, No, go for it.
You know, it's hard to know. Like, I've seen a bunch of other 5th edition Kickstarters that do really well, and others just fail completely. And so, you know, I knew we had like our pedigree, but that's a video game development pedigree. That's not role-playing books. So It's hard to know how people are going to respond to that. So. Yeah,
exactly. Plus, I mean, I do think it's surprising to me. I started making mythology videos on the Geek and Sundry Vlogs channel, which was about 5 years ago now, and it took everyone by surprise how popular those videos were. And it's just one of those things that mythology has this pull for people where they everyone's a little bit entranced by it. It's just this enchanting draw of like ancient stories, and being able to play out those ancient stories in 5th edition, I can only imagine must be the dream of like most D&D players. I might be biased, but that's, you know, my assumption.
Well, I mean, a lot of the foundations of classic fantasy are in Greek mythology, and you can see it all throughout like the monster manual. There's all these, you know, Greek elements from Greek myth, like satyrs and centaurs and so on, but there's no real unifying element for them. They're just there because they're just part of fantasy now, you know, it's just sort of stock tropes and stuff. But yeah, there was nothing unifying them, so that's kind of what the idea came from for us. It's just like, how do we take all these things and make them coherent in a D&D campaign? So.
Well, I mean, I love the concept. I should ask, for people who aren't familiar with Odyssey of the Dragonlords, which is the Kickstarter that we're talking about, how would you describe it to them?
Oh man, so it's funny. I've been thinking about it like nonstop every day for a month now, but I'm kind of past the point of being able to do the elevator pitch very well. It's something like epic adventure that combines elements of Greek mythology with you know, classic fantasy, sword and sorcery. But I guess the pitch that I would give is it's sort of like something that it uses a lot of what we love about Lord of the Rings with what I love about Jason and the Argonauts. And I always talk about how Jason and the Argonauts was like the very first D&D campaign. Like, if you actually look back at you know, the way the story is structured, like, it starts with the party assembling, and it's just always legendary, you know, heroes getting together on a boat. And then they start sailing, and just like immediately the adventure goes way off course, and they're like shipwrecked, and heroes are leaving, and they're like angry at each other, and it feels like a D&D campaign, kind of going off the rails in the first one or two sessions, right? And that's one of the things I love about that story. Is like you'd expect this classic story to have this really kind of simple structure and stuff, but no, it's like completely crazy, right? So yeah, I guess that was a large part for me. Was just, especially like people are familiar with Jason and the Argonauts, the Harryhausen Hollywood film, but for whatever reason, the Argonautica, the actual original like epic poem, is not studied much. People just don't talk about it that much. And I had read it back in college because I took a class on Greek mythology and got interested in it and kind of picked it up later. But the fact that it wasn't something we actually studied in school, to me it felt kind of criminal. And so being able to take that and run with it and kind of take all the ideas from it and plunder it was super exciting. So.
Yeah, I mean, the Argonautica in particular is, it's one of my favorites. You get those Greek epics where, everyone gets on a boat and they go on their bonkers journey. And I love all of them, the Aeneid, the Odyssey, they're all great. But the Argonautica in particular, just, it holds a special place in my heart. I recently covered it on my channel, and people said the exact same thing as you. They said, this is it. This is the original D&D party, going out, trying to have this noble quest, and everything just completely falling apart.
Yeah, everything goes wrong, and Jason's a terrible party leader, and it's
Heracles goes missing. Everyone's just like, well, I guess we just go on without him. The player never showed up.
Yeah, and then Medea's like the pickup player who comes in late and just carries the party to the end, right?
Just the only person who built her sorceress, really well. It's interesting that you mentioned Lord of the Rings. My next question is to do with that, actually. We've got kind of this strong perception in tabletop gaming, fantasy gaming at the very least, of it being kind of set in this medievalist sort of Western European analog, the Tolkien-esque. It's the mountains and the forests and that kind of geography and that kind of cultural setting. So what changes when you start designing an adventure like Odyssey of the Dragonlords for a setting that's more like a Bronze Age sort of an analog with the Mediterranean archipelago kind of geography and that different cultural context?
So I think the first thing I'd say is the adventure actually kind of starts in a very Lord of the Rings-y kind of way. We actually do have forests and mountains and so on at the beginning of the adventure, but once you get your trireme, like your sort of Corgo equivalent, then it becomes a seafaring adventure, and then it's going island to island and discovering all kinds of strange and magical things. And I think the way that is kind of reflected in just the gameplay and stuff is I think the dungeon crawl, for example, goes back to The Hobbit, right? The whole idea of dungeon crawl, I think, really is sourced in The Hobbit. It's Bilbo basically being a thief and going into the Dragon's Lair, going into Goblin Town, that sort of thing. That's all, I think, where a lot of the ideas for the original dungeon crawls came from. And so I think we kind of wanted to have some of those things at the beginning of the adventure just so it feels familiar, even though everything's Greek flavored. But then once you get later in the adventure and it becomes more of the seafaring part and the island hopping, there's not as much dungeon crawling in that section. There's kind of a large section of the book where you're coming to islands, but it's very much like the Argonautica, where you arrive and it's just sort of like, well, who lives here? What's going on here? What's the story on this island? And there's mysteries and strange magic and characters and that sort of thing. Forgotten gods, all that sort of stuff is that's sort of where it shows up. And that section is, like I said, it's not really as much about the dungeon crawling, although there are a couple of dungeon crawls in there. But then the book actually ends up, well, I don't want to spoil anything, but yeah, so it definitely, the idea of kind of setting in that archipelago sort of style is a big part of why we chose this sort of seafaring portion. We didn't want to get too far away from the dungeon crawl, so it does kind of fuse the two. That answers.
This just makes me want to play even more. I've also been wondering, there's been a lot of talk about inclusivity in gaming. It's kind of at the forefront of a lot of people's minds at the moment, and it's not only regarding getting, a diversity of players in groups at the table, playing at the table, but it's also come up in regards to representation in the art that appears in books and in the pre-written characters that are on offer in these kinds of adventures, these published adventures. So do you think that maneuvering away from that traditional medievalist analog to new settings, might that begin to facilitate those kinds of changes as well?
I think, well, first of all, I'd say that, you know, our pedigree is Bioware, and Bioware is always made it a priority to include diversity in characters and stories. And that was a priority for us in Odyssey as well. I can't really spoil anything just because, you know, I don't want to reveal too much about the characters, but we do have, you know, I think, fairly good representation. I mean, ultimately, we're three white guys, you know, and it's sort of hard for us to bring much more perspective than that. We're doing the best we can, but, you know, we're always going to get things wrong. But I think in terms of, like, whether the, you know, medieval setting is better or worse, I actually say that Greek myth in a lot of ways is harder, just because, you know, ancient Greece was a very paternalistic culture, and they, like, if you look at it, one of the things we struggled with was the fact that so many of the monsters are female, like explicitly female. You have, you know,
Echidna, mother of monsters.
Yeah, just everything, right? Like it's a lot of it feels like men's fear of women, you know, turned into kind of, you know, personified in monsters. And so that was something we kind of had to wrestle with a bit, where it's like, well, how do we have all these tropes and all these monsters and stuff in Greek myth without it essentially, you know, carrying forward that paternalism and chauvinism? And so we tried to get creative there, you know, where we could, and mix it up. And, you know, in some cases we're just like, oh, no, there's really no reason why this monster has to be explicitly female. It can be male or female or whatever. Yeah, so I would actually say that in terms of, you know, comparing it to the medieval analog, I'm not sure it's really any easier. I'd actually say it's harder in a lot of ways. But I do think, you know, as a creator or as a designer, if you're hewing too close to your source material, you know, that can be the enemy of fun and the enemy of inclusivity. You always want to be thinking first about people at the table, whether they're having fun or not. So that's our philosophy when we look at it. We're really not trying to be purists when it comes to the source material. We're just trying to make sure that everyone's having fun.
Which I'm really, I mean, I appreciate that. At the very least, as a woman, I mean, I'm still a white woman full of privilege, but, you know, we've got kind of this thing that comes up a lot. It's almost an excuse that is handed to fantasy texts readily of like, oh, we're trying to be true to the source. We're trying to, you know, sort of appealing to that idea of like authority, and we have to be realistic to the historical period, but seeing a book break away from that. I know one of my favorite art pieces that I've seen in it was in the Player's handbook that you've actually released for free already on Drive-Thru RPG, which that's like Christmas, getting to read through that. But one of my favorite art pieces included in that was a man who, from our perspective in this world, is very visibly East Asian. Like that's the ethnicity that he has, but he's also decked out in full Spartan gear. And it's just like this cool moment of going, yeah, of course, this is a Greek epic, and we want to be true to the idea of the Greek epic and make it feel like you're playing Greek epic. But at a certain point you have to go, we'll include whatever we want to include.
That's actually, you know, also, our setting is not ancient Greece, right? And part of the liberty you get from that is, you know, you can take things and put, like, familiar ideas and put interesting twists on them, right? And so, in a lot of ways, that makes it more exciting and more interesting, to me at least. As much as I love ancient Greece, as much as I love Greek myth, I always want to see, you know, the same but different, right? I want to see a new spin on things. And so, with the Spartans in particular, it's an Eurasian monk is the art piece you're talking about. The idea was we needed some way to have monks in our setting, and if you look at like the monk player class, it's clearly inspired by kung fu movies and martial arts and so on. We're like, well, how do you take martial arts and make it feel ancient Greek? You know, and so we were like, oh, Spartans, you just like, you know, they're these, you know, armorless warriors who go into the den of combat, and you know, spears are monk weapons. So all that stuff kind of fit together, and we were like, you know, we might as well make them, you know, Asian as well. So
heck freaking yeah. Next question I have written somewhere. I mean, if I can find my notes. So often, this is me picking your brain from a Bioware perspective. So often we do see how video games, particularly fantasy RPGs, have been influenced by the legacy of tabletop gaming. You know, we've got D&D, and that became like the core for a lot of these fantasy RPG video games. So I'm wondering, having worked on some of the biggest video game RPGs that are out there, how has that worked in the other direction? Has there been things from designing video games that have translated into an influence on how you design for tabletop now?
Definitely. I can try to pick apart, where those influences kind of showed up in this book. But I'd say probably the first one was, one of the big debates in role-playing books is whether you want to do a sandbox or, an adventure path that's more linear or like a railroad, right? And there's a lot of debate about, which one you should go with. People say that the sandboxes, give players more freedom, but they also are harder to DM. Whereas the railroads, players don't like being railroaded, but it's much easier to DM than that.
Right.
And so, we have this problem in video games as well, and we solve it with a design model we call lakes and rivers, which is where you have portions that are rivers, meaning you're carried by the current, and it's fairly linear. Then you arrive in a lake, and the lake is an open world sandbox, and then you have your next river into your next lake, and that sort of thing. And so this book was actually designed in that way. So we have portions that are highly story driven and more linear that build sort of big story moments and choices, and then we have portions that are more open world and sandboxy. And so I'd say that's probably the biggest influence we've taken from video games. We hope it works. James has been playtesting this and had places a while back. And, it's definitely different than the other things I've seen out there, because most of the official WTC books, I think they really take the sandbox model as kind of like what they have been doing lately, at least. But then beyond that, I would say that one thing that I'm not sure this is a positive or negative influence, but Bioware games have always been big on companion characters, like having a huge, diverse cast of characters, all of whom are interesting and have cool motivations and so on. And so we kind of packed this book full of colorful characters like that. And there's some people who will say that this is something that makes it harder to DM. A lot of adventures that are simpler and have fewer characters and are more focused on dungeon crawls are definitely easier to run. But James and I are really big on characters and story, and so it was really hard for us to leave those things out. I hope it doesn't make the book too difficult or the adventure too difficult to run, but it was just too fun putting those characters in. So.
I'm a big fan, and hopefully the people who subscribe to me for D&D stuff agree on some level, because otherwise they must be very disappointed with my content. But I'm a big believer in, you're the DM, you're running everything, so, if I have to put in a little bit more work in order to bring that kind of extra layer of fun and sort of liveliness to the setting, then I'm happy to do that, because that's where I get my fun. And I'm excited to see how gaming develops in this direction, possibly pulling more from video game design, because I really love the direction that 5th edition adventures that I'm seeing pop up more and more are leaning into, not necessarily simplicity, but maybe a more friendly user interface, if that makes sense. Like, we're moving away from floating modifiers, we're moving away from, and just moving towards these things where we can create a sense of story, a sense of verisimilitude, without having to get into every single nitty-gritty piece of simulating reality.
Well, that's actually brings up an interesting point, because balance is kind of an interesting discussion around 5th edition in particular, because it's not as mathematically precise as previous editions. I want to say, James told me this, I don't know if it was Mike Merles who mentioned that they just kind of design the world like whatever's there is what's there. If there's a dragon in that cave, that's just because there's a dragon in that cave. We didn't put it there because it was balanced, for a party of 4 whatever. Like, it's literally just there's a dragon there, so if you go in there, be prepared to fight a dragon. I don't care if you're, the right level for it or not. And, you can't do that in video games, and so we have a history of I was a raid designer in Star Wars: The Old Republic, so we did we had complicated Excel sheets to balance every encounter for like the exact party composition you were bringing, and so that's the skill set I'm coming from with this book. But we didn't go that direction with it. We took the 5th edition philosophy, so it's much more whatever's there is what's there, and hopefully they're playtesting. It seems to be working, but I think every table is different. If you have a table full of min-maxers, then content's always going to be easier. But if you have a table full of role players who are not paying attention to their builds as much, then hopefully they'll survive.
Was switching to that philosophy freeing, or was it really stressful having to suddenly try to shut out that part of your brain that's...
I would say it was freeing for James, but I think James always was from that, like, because working on Baldur's Gate 2, those are games that were a lot like that. Like I remember in the Docks district in Baldur's Gate 2, there's a warehouse. If you open the door, you walk in, and there's just like 15th level wizard sitting in there with like a katana that's like a +5 katana. That it's just like nope, you can't. There's no way you can deal with that encounter when you first stumble onto it. But it's just there, and it's part of the world, and it makes it more interesting. It's one of the things I love about that game. So I think for James, it was kind of going back to the way he used to design games back before they got so like they had all the interesting bits filed off. For me, it was just kind of like, I don't know, I feel like I've been in kind of a cave for years working on a massive online game, and then I'm kind of peeking out. I'm like, I'm not so sure about this. Like, maybe it's a good idea, maybe it's a bad idea. But I think, hopefully when people start playing it, we can get some feedback on that, and I'll have an idea of whether it worked or not.
Yeah. I mean, hey, that's what the internet is for, to tell you what you did right and what you did wrong. Over and over again, very loudly.
Right?
All right, so last question. I would love to know what just your favorite little element of design that went into Odyssey, which element is the thing you can't wait to see published? Like whether that's a piece of art, lore, an NPC, a mechanic that's your favorite. Just what's your favorite thing that you want to see people reacting to?
I guess the seafaring portion is probably the thing I'm most excited about. Just we got a bunch of really beautiful maps by John Stevenson for all the islands, and the mechanic for navigating the oceans I think is really interesting. We decided to do something a bit different with it, where you're not just
Oh no, I'm losing you. The internet decided that the secrets couldn't be shared.
Yeah, it was a spoiler alert.
No, Jesse, don't tell them.
So we have a magical artifact used to navigate the oceans that I'm really excited about. It's based on the Antikythera device. I'm not sure if you've heard of it. It's like an ancient piece of clockwork that was recovered from a buried ship, some ship that was lost at sea.
I haven't heard this, but now I'm very excited about it.
Yeah, definitely look it up. So I discovered this like 10 years ago or something, and it's always fascinating, the idea that they had essentially clockwork devices. And I think it was speculated that it's like a astronomical device that tracks the position of planets, that sort of thing. And they would have used it for navigation, I guess. I mean, really, you don't need a device for that. So we took that idea and we ran with it. Like, what if this was a magical clockwork device and you use that? It's a little bit like, actually, it was also based on, I don't know if you watch One Piece.
Oh, yeah.
Japanese anime. The log pose that you, use to, kind of navigate between islands. You have to reset it each time. So we combined the idea of the log pose with the Antikythera device and made a magic item out of it, basically. You go, you basically navigate to new islands using constellations. And each constellation has a little story that Drew Karpyshyn wrote for us, which is, they're really a couple of paragraphs long, but they're, I don't know, it just adds a lot of flavor to it. I love that it wasn't just a mechanical process of sailing from island to island, it was more of a kind of...
It's got some world behind it. It's got, some reality in the midst of the fantasy.
So, I guess that's probably my favorite part. Hopefully people dig that.
Well, I'm super excited about this. There are 2 weeks, or just under 2 weeks left on the Kickstarter, if people want to get in on it in time. I know I'm super excited to play the game. Thank you again so much, Jesse Sky, for coming and talking to me. It's late his time. He's been good to me to come and speak. Again, people can check out the Player's Guide for free on DriveThruRPG if they want to get a taste. Is there anything else that we need to mention?
I think that's it. Like you said, it's pretty late for me, so hopefully I've made sense in this interview. It was very nice to meet you, and I'm looking forward to watching more of your videos.
It was wonderful meeting you too. It's always good to meet another person who's got the same fan intersections as me.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, thank you very, very much. The Kickstarter closes on the 17th of May. I've got links in the description if you're interested in checking it out. And I had a super great time chatting with Jesse. Hopefully I'm not forgetting anything else that I have to say.